Nice.
He was in smoke stealth. That was a stealth fire. Sorry, a blind fire. Good day there once again, viewers. Your mate Kamikaze78 here, coming to you guys with some more World of Warships content. Today, my friends, we're going to be taking a look at this, the Stalingrad. Now, yes, I know that I am somewhat behind schedule on this, and that I probably should have had this review up a long time ago, but quite frankly, guys, I wanted to get this right. This is the Stalingrad we are talking about after all. Quite possibly one of the more controversial ships to have been introduced into the game as of late, so yes, I wanted to get this review right. Now, I'm sure that this ship needs no introduction whatsoever, but for the uninformed, this is the Tier 10 Soviet premium cruiser that is available for 26,000 steel in the arsenal of World of Warships. And I'm guessing that you've probably heard a lot about this ship from other community contributors, and some from myself as well, because she's been one of the hardest ships to balance for the guys at Wargaming. I'm pretty sure that we saw about 4 different versions of the ship before we had reached the final version that we are now playing, and even then, the ship has been met with a huge amount of controversy, which quite frankly, I will admit, is warranted, because the ship in her final state is completely and totally, as my mate Sentry Gun would say,
Gonna rate the ship on the A, B, C, D rating system. Was it A for it's alright, C for could be better, D for don't bother, and B for busted. Yeah, that's it. I give this ship a B. For fucking busted.
We are talking cruiser-grade dispersion on 305mm guns that reload in 17 seconds when outfitted correctly, with a 36% fire chance. Oh, and she's Russian, which means she gets stupidly high velocities that make her guns a breeze to fire at range, and downright deadly to anything that dares to show a broadside at medium to close ranges. This thing is just pure evil and so broken in the gun aspect that makes her one of the most sought out ships of recent times. I actually feel kind of bad for the poor sods over at Wargaming who have had, and shall continue to have, the pleasure of trying to balance this thing, because I can guarantee that this ship will get visited once again in the future. But of course, like we do with all the reviews that we do on this channel, let's do a quick TLDR of the ship for those who aren't too keen on watching a 10-minute plus long review. And the TLDR of this ship is that she is a fucking beast. Sporting an unrivaled firepower in the range of cruisers, this thing will eat any broadsided ship with its heavy-hitting 305mm guns that feature the pinnacle Russian velocities and gun arcs. As far as reliable damage output is concerned, this ship is the prime example of that very term. On top of that, her respectable armor layout and health pools sees her being capable at tanking some serious damage when needed. This is of course assuming that you don't show a broadside. The only real aspect she falls short in is her turning ability. While yes, in a straight line she will reach a 36 knot top speed, which is nothing to poke fun at when we're talking about a cruiser, but her ability to turn represents that of a truck in a small suburban street. It's awkward, timely, and quite frankly, painful. This makes aircraft attacks and torpedo strikes against the ship the most effective way to deal with it, that and just a sheer number of shells flying at the ship. But even then, her defensive AA and radar consumable gives captains of the ship the tools to either deter or become notified about potential incoming attacks nice and early. Overall, this is a ship with one of the most consistent, high damage gun platforms in the game that have also been slapped on a ship with a decent speed, concealment, AA with defensive AA in play, and armor displacement, making her one of the most, if not the most powerful all-rounder ship in the game right now at this given point in time. Anyway, for those who want a more in-depth review, let's start discussing the ship from a statistical point of view and get over the ship's characteristics from a numbers perspective. Starting off with the ship's main armament, and fuck me dead, this is what makes this ship so scary. On this ship, we are talking 3x3 305mm guns that have a maximum range of 20.35 kilometers that fire every 20 seconds by default. And with that kind of gun arsenal, you can well and truly scare the living bejesus out of anything that dares to broadside you. And just in case you thought that wasn't bad enough, the ship also gets Russian velocities at 950 meters per second. That's for both HE and AP, by the way, which sees stupidly flat shell arcs in turn that allow for some high penetration potential at even maximum distances. And at close range, it's downright punishing, capable of deleting cruisers straight from the face of the Earth. Now, considering that we are dealing with stupidly fast-moving shells that are coming close to battleship degrees of size, you would think that we would see some degree of inaccuracy to try and balance the ship out. Nope, not at all. This ship features a horizontal dispersion range of 160 meters to 218 meters, which is more accurate outright than the Yamato, a maximum vertical dispersion of 648 meters, which is just slightly worse than the Yamato, but, and get this, she features a sigma of 2.65. I'm sorry, but what? That makes this ship's incredible firepower also stupidly reliable to hit targets, and if I'm honest, the only time I've ever really missed shots was when my aim was off, you know, when I moved from a ship with a slower shell velocity to this thing. And in turn, what an experienced player could do with this kind of armament, which is also the only kind of player who's going to have access to this ship because you needed to win clan battles in order to unlock the currency that you needed for the ship, is quite frankly beyond staggering. I've seen people get stupid XP counts with this thing. The HE of this ship is also incredibly competitive, sitting at a 32% fire chance by default, which per salvo is 96.6% with all shells in play. That's right, every salvo you are almost guaranteed to fire. Now this is of course before modifiers come into play, but even with modifiers in play, to give you an idea, I have gone ahead and set 3 fires in one salvo before, and I've done it on multiple occasions in this ship, and it just feels downright harsh on the poor bastard that's on the receiving end, quite frankly. The one place that this ship does fall short in terms of her main armament is in her traverse speed, sporting a 36-second 180-degree turn time, or 5 degrees per second for her guns. So, the ship's one true weakness is going to be just a shit ton of enemies power driving her to the bottom of the ocean from different angles. But with a respectable turret angling potential, you should be able to just place yourself in a position that allows for you to bounce shells and keep enemies at a distance while using all of your guns and keeping them on one side of your ship. However, the main armament isn't everything here, so let's take a look at the ship's other aspects. Secondaries wise, she features 6x2 130mm shells loaded with HE and have a 6.5 kilometer range. And if I'm being 100% honest, you never really want to be in a situation where the secondaries are going to start firing on this ship due to her armor placement. She is great at long range damage tanking, don't get me wrong, but at close quarters you are more than likely going to be surrounded and bullied down to the depths, which, as we said before, is where the Stalingrad runs short. Her AA isn't the worst in the world, however, but is also nowhere near incredible. She features 83 DPS at the 3.1 kilometer range, 123 DPS at the 3.5 kilometer range, and 167 DPS at the 5.7 kilometer range. And while those numbers may not be the best on their own, throw defensive fire into the mix and she becomes a decent anti-aircraft deterrent here, a lot better than her Kronstadt Tier 9 counterpart. When it comes to her straight line speed, she will top out at 35 knots when in a straight line, which is accompanied by a horrendous turning circle radius of 1,130 meters, which, yes, is battleship territory by a country mile. Thankfully, her rudder shift time isn't in a battleship territory as bad, sitting at 12.5 seconds, but with all factors in play, her turning circle is in no way, shape, or form a competitive element here, and dodging shells while you are broadsided may become problematic. When moving at max speed, her turning circle is going to feel like you are trying to turn a train that isn't actually on the tracks, which is going to hurt as far as dodging torpedoes is also concerned. And with that, we arrive at this ship's survivability. Now, considering that she handles like it's a damn chore, we're going to want to hope that she can take a hit, because dodging shells and torpedoes and all the bells and whistles just isn't going to be in this ship's agenda. And in the correct circumstance, it can take a hit, but on the flip side, if you decide to get too close and get into a brawl of any sort of kind against a battleship, you are most certainly going to have a rough time. She only features 180mm worth of citadel armor about above the waterline, so any sort of broadsiding hit from a battleship and even high caliber cruisers sitting close to you are going to hurt. The advantage behind this ship's citadel armor is that A, it sits pretty deep within the ship, meaning that devastating hits from the bow are going to be rare, and B, the citadel armor doesn't extend around the side of the ship, meaning that a clean angle is going to be needed to score a clean hit on the citadel. So the ship does have a weak broadside armor, but as we said before, the ship can take some serious damage when needed. How? Well, via the bow, stern, and deck armor. The bow and stern armor is oddly split up into 3 sections, with the top and bottom thirds of the bow and stern featuring 50mm worth of armor, with the middle third featuring 25mm. However, the 25mm armor plating on the bow can be observed as being incredibly close to the waterline, which is going to make this ship incredibly difficult for battleships to overmatch from the bow. The Yamato will even have troubles overmatching the 50mm armor plating if that's what she hits, but if a Yamato pilot were to nail the 25mm section, it's going to be tough times. Bow and the stern deck armor plating consist of 25mm, which isn't going to be the best against plunging fire, but the deck armor within the middle of the ship is fitted with 50mm plating, which is going to see even the newly implemented Haragumo and Kitakaze score shatters on your deck armor. Combine the 50mm deck armor with a 70mm Citadel deck plate, and you have some decent protection against plunging fire. With a corresponding health pool of 72,450 HP, she can easily tank some damage and divert a lot of attention from your allies when needed. And I feel as though that's what she mainly, sits at as far as rolls are concerned, but more on that in a few seconds. Out of the box, her detection sits at an 18.1 kilometer for surface detection and 13.8 kilometers for air detection. So you're going to want to hope that you have some positioning for tanking damage, because you're going to be getting spotted really early. Well, unless you decide to take this thing out for concealment, which you're going to want to do, but more on that in a few moments. Right, so if you're new to my channel, that was a lot of numbers, and you might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed right now. But that's what we tend to do here. We go over the numbers, and then we start discussing the strategy and, how the ship plays based on those numbers. And from a numbers perspective, that was the Stalingrad. And when played right, this thing will be an absolute menace on the battlefield that will make even battleships fill their pants. She is the kind of ship that will provide overwatch on a capture point from afar as allies push forward and steal the attention of enemies from those allies. And those allies are going to feel safe no matter how far back this thing is sitting, because at the end of the day, these said enemy ships are going to want to be focusing on the Stalingrad with the amount of firepower that she is sporting. And on that note, I'm not going to beat around the bush here, guys. When we talk about the main armament alone on this ship, this thing is overpowered. A 2.65 Sigma on 305mm guns that are more accurate horizontally than a Yamato and have a 32% fire chance by default and a 20-second reload with Russian velocity gun angles makes this thing one of the most competitive damage dealers out there, overpoweredly so. Her guns well and truly have no downside to them at all, which makes this thing just deadly against anything that dares to take on the Stalingrad. I've legit seen ships try and take a shot at me, realize exactly what kind of firepower that I can dish back, and try to make the quickest retreat I think I've ever seen in World of Warships. I've legitimately seen enemies make a choice between either engaging me or the Groza curve first at close range, and they've chosen the Groza curve first. That's how bad this is at this point. And the AP salvos that you can land on out-of-position battleships easily extends into the tens of thousands. It'll eat a cruiser that's out of position just for breakfast, there's no denying that at all. And even destroyers don't even want to come near this thing thanks to the radar, which mind you is Russian radar, which means it extends out to about 11 kilometers. And the accurate quick velocity guns also make, dealing with destroyers a breeze here. Got ships that are showing a half-decent angle? Bring forth the HE. Once again, there have been games where I've scored upwards of 9k alpha damage with HE salvos and set 3 fires, all at once, on angled battleships. If that isn't just purely disgusting, I simply don't know what is. It's a main armament that is literally effective against every kind of threat at any point in time, and that is pushing the limits of balance in itself. However, such power does come with a condition, and that is that you do not overextend. This is quite simply a very passive ship that demands to be eased into battle, sort of caressed into battle if you will, not rushed in with no prior thoughts to the situation ahead. As great as the main armament is, the turret traverse means that once you pick a target, you are going to want to stick with nailing that poor bastard to a wall as long as you can. CQC gives enemy teams a chance to surround you, and changing targets frantically in a Stalingrad to aim for the target of highest opportunity will see an enemy lay into you uncontested while your guns rotate for the 7th time this fight. Getting into close quarters means that you will also give enemies more opportunities to start laying into your weak citadel. By sticking at a decent range, you can have your guns move less between targets and have your armor angled better for more targets at once. It's all about letting the Stalingrad control the situation that she is in, and that is exactly what she does best. Rolls into a situation, says, "What's up? This is my fight now," and begins to dictate how the fight needs to go. As long as she keeps the battle on her terms, then she will do just that with a clean slate every time. but she has to remain in control for every fight by keeping enemies herded in front of her, using that 50mm armor plating and avoiding getting ambushed from cheeky DD torps. As I said before, the mobility of this ship makes torpedo strikes one of her main weaknesses, so keeping destroyers at bay with the radar is going to be key in ensuring that you can prepare for any sort of ambush. Even using the radar to spot out potential threats, pulling a flank around the island is going to help you position for, well, you know, not getting broadside citadeled. And that kind of wraps up how to play the Stalingrad. Passively at range and just bullying poor bastards to the depths of the sea. And just before we get into discussing, you know, how to outfit the Stalingrad, I want to make a note regarding the firepower of this ship. And which, right now, is the problem with this ship. Sure, her health pool may be high, her armor displacement may be extremely difficult to crack, and her ability to position against main battery salvos is extremely effective. But she still has a weakness in this regard to her survivability. A broadsiding hit will cripple the Stalingrad, as will a well-timed / placed airstrike or, you know, torpedo strike. Right now, the issue is how effortlessly she can dish out damage, which in turn is not an issue that comes from how big the guns are, but instead how accurate they are in relation to how fast they can fire. This mainly comes from the Sigma buff that Wargaming decided to give the ship. 2.65 Sigma on guns of this size is something unheard of, especially when you are looking at Yamato level, or better than Yamato level horizontal accuracy. And quite frankly, is something that'll place this ship in a league of its own. Yes, the Yamato does have the bigger guns and only a slightly worse Sigma, but at the end of the day, if the Stalingrad can land the majority of its shots per salvo on a target and the Yamato only lands a couple shots per salvo, it's going to, on average, deal more damage. That's just how it's going to work. But what makes it even worse is how fast the guns can actually fire. When you can fire shells of this size, this accurately, every 16 seconds when spec'd properly, then that is quite simply a broken output of damage. Now, personally, I quite like the idea of the Russian fleet getting accuracy and shell velocity as their special trait, if you will, but as a trade-off, something that the Stalingrad doesn't have enough of yet, there needs to be a rate of fire nerf to this ship to put it back in line with others as far as damage output is concerned. Yes, we've got heavy hitting shells that are very accurate, but if we reduce the rate of fire something to like 20 to 25 seconds, I feel that will sort of place this ship's damage scoring potential back in line with others. Because quite frankly, this is a cruiser with battleship guns slapped on it, or a battleship with a cruiser tag slapped on it, I think is the more accurate way of wording that. Now, she may sacrifice the size and guns in comparison to other tier 10 battleships, but she makes up for it in accuracy. We need to nerf the rate of fire just to bring the damage potential a little bit more on par with what else we're dealing with here, and then I think we'll have a really well balanced ship, but right now that is far from the case. Anyway, let's discuss loadouts with the ship after all of that discussion. As far as my loadout is concerned, upgrades wise, I've got main armament mod 1, surveillance radar mod 1, aiming systems mod 1, damage control systems mod 2, concealment systems mod 1, and main battery armament mod 3. Captain skills, we've got priority target, expert marksman, adrenaline rush, superintendent, demolition expert, concealment expert, and fire prevention, that being a full 19-point captain. The whole loadout here is designed to essentially improve the survivability of the ship, but also improve her main armament, as well as improve the reload rate as well, with especially how far you tend to go down as far as health points are concerned. And my friends, with all of that said, that is today's very lengthy video concluded on the Stalingrad. I wanted to use this video not only as a review, but a way to discuss this ship, because she is a very controversial ship. She is in no way, shape, or form balanced when it comes to main armament right now. That is my personal opinion. I think she is completely and totally broken as it stands, and I think she does need a nerf. And I feel as though the solution, or the suggestion that I provided in this video, is going to be, you know, what's best for the ship. That's my humble opinion, without losing some of the characteristics of the ship. I know this video is extremely long, guys, and I do apologize for that. I'm hoping you guys found the timestamps that are going to be pinned in the comment section down below, as well as in the description, so feel free to use that to your avail, guys. Well, if you've made it this far, then there's no need. But anyway, guys, if you did enjoy today's lengthy video on the Stalingrad, then a backhanding of that like button would be greatly appreciated. And if you guys are new to the channel and enjoyed today's content, then feel free to backhand the subscribe button whilst you're at it. I would also greatly appreciate that, guys. Once again, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I'll be seeing you guys all next time. Have a good one, guys. Take care.